Rashid Khalidi. He's an Edward Said Professor of Arab Studies at Columbia University and the author of the book, The 100 Years' War on Palestine. He was an advisor to Palestinian negotiators in Spain and the US from 1991 to 1993. And I'm pleased to say he's joining us now live from New York. Rashid Khalidi, thanks for being with us here on TRT World. Now, let's start off here. In your opinion, are we now into the third Intifada?
I think what we're seeing is something a little broader even than the first or the second Intifada, because firstly, this started with Jerusalem, and Jerusalem touches on issues that concern everybody in the Muslim world and many others, obviously Christians and Jews. Secondly, because it has encompassed the entirety of the Palestinian people. The first Intifada started in the Gaza Strip and spread to the West Bank and occupied Arab East Jerusalem. There were some echoes inside the Palestinian areas of Israel. But this round, which started with the attacks on the Al-Aqsa Mosque and with the eviction or the planned eviction of families from the Sheikh Jarrah region, has spread to the entirety of former mandatory Palestine, all of Israel and all of the occupied territory. So this is actually broader than anything that we've seen before in terms of unrest throughout Palestine amongst the entirety of the Palestinian people. And we've seen both in Lebanon and in Jordan, Palestinian refugees from the diaspora coming down to the border. I heard yesterday a dozen buses came from refugee camps near Tripoli. The same thing's happening on the Israeli-Jordanian border with Palestinians. So this is something broader than either of the two Intifadas.
Maybe a weakness of language. I want you to try and describe to us what you think it is. And actually, many people may have put the starting point of this latest round of violence, the barricades that were put in place outside Al-Aqsa at the beginning of Ramadan, as being the point at which this confrontation perhaps became inevitable.
I think that's correct. It was events in Jerusalem that sparked this, and it's events in Jerusalem that caused this outpouring on the part of Palestinians. But it's because they connect to issues that concern all Palestinians. I mean, the holy places. There were infringements on worshipers going to the Holy Sepulchre, Christian worshipers. Then there was, as you say, barricades placed during Ramadan nights to prevent Palestinians from spending the evening together on the steps and the plaza in front of Damascus Gate. And then finally, there were the Israeli occupation authorities barred Palestinians from different parts of Palestine from coming to worship in the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the last several nights of Ramadan, including the Qadr, one of the most important dates in the Islamic calendar. So it definitely was Jerusalem. It was also, as I mentioned, the attempts to evict Palestinian families from their homes in the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood of Jerusalem together, which sparked this outburst.
Mr. Khalidi, I wonder if you can help me to try and work out what's the aim of this here. Now, obviously, that's a very broad question, but let's just focus in on two distinct points. This perhaps were the last couple of weeks of that Benjamin Netanyahu government. That now has been put on the back burner. And for Hamas as well and the Palestinian Authority as to what it is. What is the aim of what we're seeing play out for these past few days and what may continue for a few weeks from both sides? What are they looking to try and achieve?
Right. Well, I think that there are multiple actors here. One of them, of course, is the Netanyahu government. Another, of course, is the Hamas authorities in Gaza. The third, and I would argue the most important, is Palestinian popular anger at occupation practices that have been going on, respectively, for 53 and 73 years. That is what is causing the demonstrations in the West Bank. That is what's causing the unrest and demonstrations in Palestinian communities inside Israel. And that's what provoked Hamas to become involved in this. On the Israeli side, I think that several things may be at work. I'm not an expert on Israeli politics, but it seems to me that as with everything he does, Benjamin Netanyahu is seeking a means to remain prime minister, to avoid being convicted of corruption. And I'm sure that that plays into the decisions that the Israeli government is making.
I mean, the suggestion there from your answer, Mr. Khalidi, is that even if there was some kind of agreement between Hamas and the Israeli government as it is, that may not stop the anger of Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank.
That may be the case. And I think that in a sense, a new chapter has opened up because people have realized that all of these issues are connected. They are connected to the Nakba. They are connected also to the occupation of 1967. In other words, property issues, issues of discrimination and segregation against Palestinians in Israel are all linked to the Nakba. Issues like the Israeli control of the Al-Aqsa Mosque and Israeli violation of the status quo around the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Haram al-Sharif are related again to the occupation. So I think what people are realizing is that, first of all of these issues in all of Palestine are linked. And secondly, that you can't just deal with one of them or deal with another of them. They have to be dealt with together.
Absolutely. Completely intractable situation, but we do appreciate your analysis and your expertise. Rashid Khalidi from Columbia University, thank you very much for being with us. Sorry, sir, you have one more thing you wanted to add. Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, yes. I think it's really important for external actors, the government of Turkey, Arab governments, to focus on what they can do collectively around Jerusalem. This is a collective responsibility of Arab and Muslim countries. And together, they can intervene and demand that Israel respect the status quo, demand that Israel cease to do things like they did the other night when armed security forces entered the Haram al-Sharif and fired tear gas grenades and stun grenades into the Al-Aqsa Mosque. These are things that are inconceivable. And concerted action by Muslim and Arab countries could put a halt to this, I think.
I think the definitive word there is could, Rashid Khalidi. We do appreciate your analysis there, and thank you very much for being with us here.